And we are live. Hi, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Level Up Live. I am Dr. Sharita Gaskins Tillett, your host, and I can hardly contain my excitement tonight. I cannot wait to share tonight's guest with you. So, our guest tonight is Dr. Nneka Unachukwu, also known as Dr. Una. She is a board certified pediatrician and the founder and CEO of Ivy League Pediatrics outside Atlanta, Georgia. She graduated from the University of Nigeria College of Medicine and completed her residency in New Jersey before opening her own practice. After honing her entrepreneurial skills, Dr. Una created the EntreMD Business School, podcast, and community to help physicians build personal brands around their expertise, open practices, and develop other product and service lines. Featured in Forbes and a member of the Forbes Business Council, she has helped doctors all over the world leverage entrepreneurship to build lives they love. She is also the author of two best-selling books. She lives outside Atlanta, Georgia with her husband and four children. So help me welcome my coach, my mentor, my friend, Dr. Una. Welcome, Dr. Una. How are you?
I am doing great. Thank you so much for having me here. I've been looking forward to this.
Well, thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it. I can't wait to share you with the audience tonight. So, I usually start by asking my guests to take us on a journey through their medical career, like their path through medicine. So tell me a little bit about, I mentioned in your bio that you attended medical school in Nigeria and residency in New Jersey. But how did you come to choose pediatrics as a specialty?
Well, it's a little bit of a convoluted story because when I was in medical school, people are like, "What is your specialty going to be?" I'm like, "I don't know, but I know it's not pediatrics. I'm sure about that." And so my first choice was OBGYN. And it was really because I had such a heart for the moms. It's such a vulnerable period, right? Whether that's pregnancy or dealing with infertility or, having fibroid, like it's all
Yeah.
vulnerable. And I'm like, oh man, I just want to support them. But in the European system, which is a system used in Nigeria, there's a bit of a hierarchy. Typically, an attending who's been attending for 10 years is not attending deliveries at 2 a.m. and stuff like that. So it's a different kind of system. And so when I moved to the US, I was like, wait, 24-hour calls, like for the rest of my life? Like overnight deliveries? I was like, no can do.
Yes,
I'm like,
yes.
I have so many aspects to my life that I just can't. And so I was like, where can I still find the mommies? Where can I still support the women? And I was like, well, they come with their kids in pediatrics. And so I actually chose pediatrics because of the moms.
Really?
And yes, because I was like, I still want to be able to, like I see them after they have the babies. Almost not every mother, but a lot of mothers feel like they're failures. They feel like they're not getting it right. And if I could just support them on that journey, right? So the mothers drove me to pediatrics, and really, my patients were like, Dr. Una, we just come because of you. You're like our therapist. Like they could feel the support, even though it's not their doctor, right?
Yeah,
And so I
yeah.
said, I was like the family doctor, the kid and the mom. But that's how I ended up in pediatrics.
I see. Well, see, and that's actually very different from me. Well, not so different. Well, the opposite. I went in thinking I was going to be a pediatrician. And then I realized, wait a minute, I don't want three patients. You got the mom, the dad, and the baby can't talk. This is not for me. So, okay, so you chose pediatrics and you were in a private practice in Georgia. Um, Tell me about that. How did you come to? Well, I guess the first thing I want to know is because you started your practice right out of residency. Is that right?
I started my practice 15 months out of residency. So I trained in New Jersey, did my interviews, got a job in Georgia, moved to Georgia. I had been there for about 8 months or so. I did a 1 year contract, and then my boss is like, "Oh yeah, I've really enjoyed working with you. Here's a 5 year contract." And at this point in time, I just finished 3 years of residency. I'd been married for 3 years. So my definition of eternity was 3 years, right? So, so this 5 year contract, I was like, oh my goodness. But I was going to need to move anyway. And so I was like, no, I'm not going to be able to renew my contract. And he's like, okay, well, if you're not going to do that, you should start a practice. And I looked at him like he was nuts. I was like, okay, hang on. First of all, nobody starts. Like I would have been done with my contract at about 12 to 15 months. I was like, Nobody starts a practice 15 months out of residency. In case you missed this very obvious bump here, I'm pregnant. So like, this is the time not to start a practice. And he's like, no, because the doctor who owned the practice was a neonatologist. So he didn't actually work in the practice because of the conflict of interest. And so I was like a solo doc who ran the practice. It's like, you're doing everything here. If you have questions, I can answer them. I can help you, but this is the time to start a practice. And it took me a few months, but eventually I was like, you know what? I was so ignorant, right? I didn't have any Facebook group to go look at. I didn't have anybody to talk to. I was so ignorant. I was like, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Let's do that.
But what, I guess, because, I know you. And so I know some of your personality or your former personality. So what made an introverted introvert think that they could start a practice? Because that's a big deal, right?
It's a big deal. I think a big part of it was I didn't know any better.
Okay.
I think
ignorance is bliss. Okay.
Ignorance is bliss. I didn't know any better. And, I think, and this is, helpful for anybody listening. Part of it was when he said it, I dismissed it. I was like, that's insane. Nobody does that. But then I started sitting with the idea, right? And so I'll pull up pediatric practices, pull up their websites, look at the things they offer, look at the kind of doctors who are there, look at their reviews. What do people like? What do people not like? And it's that concept of staring. I stared at it long enough that I was like, I might could do that.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean? I sat with it for months and I was like, okay, well, let's give this a shot, and so I didn't think I could do it. I definitely did not know what I was up against, but I think it was just hanging out with the idea of it as opposed to completely dismissing it, right? Okay. Which is what makes it really critical, especially the times that we're in as physicians. There are things where like, I can't do that. Sit with it though. Sit with people who are doing that. Stay in communities where people are doing that. Read books of people who did that. Like hang out with the idea, stare at the idea. And every time you do it, you'll convince yourself a little more that you can. You know what I mean? And this was 14, 15 years ago. And my goodness. Yeah.
Okay. So now let's fast forward. So you're in this practice, your practice is successful, it's doing well. And we're in 2016. And something pivotal happened at that time. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so 2016, we'd had the practice for almost about 6 years at this point. I had made some crucial shifts. Like I'll mention one, when I started the practice, people talk about imposter syndrome and stuff like that. I was just flat out like, I don't know what I'm doing here. And I'm like, all these people who have these practices are so successful. They're so much better than me. And I suck, right? And I remember reading a book, Eat That Frog by Brian Tracy. And in that, there was just one line where he says, all business skills are learnable. And I'm like, all business skills are learnable. I'm like, okay, I don't have business skills, which I thought was a problem. But apparently it's not, because if they're learnable, there's one thing I'm really good at.
Yeah, all that
is learning.
We can learn.
We can learn. I was like, okay, so it's game on, right? And so I started learning and the practice started growing, learned about marketing, learned about selling, learned about operations, hiring, firing, all of those things. I was like, wait, even networking, right? So I'm an introvert. Networking is not a personality type. It's a skill, right? Like, so I can learn it.
Yeah.
So the practice was working. I had a doctor who was working 1 day a week. So I had a long weekend, every weekend, everything was going well. And then I remember a morning when I was sitting and, I was not thinking about medicine practice, none of that. And I just had this knowing, for one of a better way to put it, that medicine as we know it is gone, that there's some fundamental shifts that have happened. And if the only thing I'm good at is doctoring, if the only way I can practice medicine is doctoring, the only way I can bring in revenue is doctoring, then I'm out of luck. And on the outside, now when you hear that, you're like, yeah, that makes sense. But in 2016, that was a crazy thought. Like I got dragged in some Facebook groups for saying that.
The thought just kind of came, or were there things that you saw around you that made you draw that conclusion?
No, the thought just came. I mean, like, yes, there were some things Like, for instance, when I graduated residency, CVS was not going to be my competition.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, if you can think back to that time, there was nothing like Minute Click. There were barely urgent cares.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, none of those things
Yeah.
existed. So we had this market where you could really kind of hang the shingle and get away with it because we had a monopoly of sorts, even though we didn't plan for it. But that's just the, the way it was. So it just came to me, but it was so um, significant to me that I was like, I need to do something. There was a sense of urgency. And so I was like, okay, well, what if I couldn't do what I did as a doctor? How could I still do what I needed to do? And I was like, well, I could be a speaker. Now, introverted introvert, right? Socially awkward, super shy,
Speaker came to mind.
So you understand how impressed I was by the thought I had, right?
Yeah.
Like, I could be gulp a speaker. I mean, people do that, right? I could be a consultant. I mean, I've started a practice. I could show other people how to do that. I was like, I could be an author. I was like, I can be the CEO of my practice, which is very different from being the lead pediatrician, right? But what kind of impact could I have on my practice where I could earn the same not seeing patients?
Yeah.
So these are all the thoughts that came to me. I had no idea how to do any of them. Hadn't seen anybody do them. Oops, am I back?
You're here.
Oh, there was a blink. It's pouring outside. Okay. My bad. I hadn't seen anybody do them. So I was like, okay, let me start embracing this, right? And so the first thing I did was a speaker training, a course on speaking. Talk of fish out of water. It was so bad. I mean, but the thing is, I was willing to retool myself. So I was willing to become a beginner again. I was willing to learn again. I was willing to do uncomfortable things. I was willing to go up on stage. I was scared spitless. But I was like, I am not going to be on the wrong side of whatever transition is coming.
Yeah.
That's the way it is. It felt urgent, like it's going to be a bloodbath and you need to be ready. And really from that point on is one of those and the rest is history type of moments because I learned to speak. Initially, I started practicing all the things I was learning in the context of my practice. But I was like, wait a minute, if there's going to be a bloodbath, like if this is going to be bad, there are a million, by the time 800,000 licensed physicians, like we need to know that we need to all be retooling ourselves. And that's how EntreMD was born. It was born out of that. Like, come on, guys, let's do this. And so I started, coaching physicians. Then we started the podcast. Then we started the EntreMD Business School, then books, and then everything else. But it all came out of that one pivotal moment where I was like, everything has changed. Now, 7 years later, it's very obvious that everything has changed.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? Like,
especially the pandemic made it clear, if nothing else.
Yeah, the pandemic was like, this is what has been going on beneath the surface. And, if it was urgent then, it is so critically urgent now.
Yes.
That we're taking charge of our own careers. The marketplace has changed. The healthcare space has changed, and we need to adapt. We cannot be the way we've always been. We cannot do things the way we've always done them. We have to be different.
So then what about the people who say, physicians will always have a job because we're the backbone of medicine, we're the backbone of healthcare? What do you say about that?
So I'll tell you what I said in 2016, because I did a post like that. It is so funny. Sometimes I go back and look at it. I said, pretend it's 2022. That's what I said then. Pretend it's 2022. And we have been replaced. There's so many people who can do the jobs, or at least they think they can do the jobs that we do. What would you do? And in the comments, people are like, I'm emergency medicine. I will always be in demand and I will always have a job. And I'm like, okay, but can you at least play the game with me? Yes. What if? Because I knew, I was like, this is heading in a different direction. Then I thought it was a little ignorant for people to think that, right? Because jobs do disappear. And I'm not saying every single job will disappear, but it's nothing like it used to be. If it was urgent then, it is critically urgent now. Critically urgent. You know my philosophy, so you know that I'm like, every physician has to become an entrepreneur, whether you work a job or not. You need to be an entrepreneur. You need to be in control. You need to know how to create revenue. You need to know how to negotiate. You need to know how to make your voice heard. You need to know how to build your own brand. You need to know how to monetize your brand. We don't get to say we will always have a job. That job may always be there, but if there are 10,000 and now they're 10,
Yes.
we still
Yeah.
have a problem, right?
Too.
And so when we look at the healthcare space, I hope nobody's still thinking that I mean, now if you're a neurosurgeon, please think that. But
Right, right, right.
other than that, please don't think that.
Yeah, but okay, so we know that how do I want to put this? That the space has changed. But what about us? We're the same. So we've not been trained for business. Honestly, I think 70% of physicians at this point are employed physicians. We're used to having an employer. We don't get any business training. How do we, you're telling us this and we're seeing this. I talked to friends during the pandemic who were laid off or were forced to take PTO and those kinds of things. And so I think we can recognize that there is a problem, but how do we embrace this thing that you're telling us? You're telling us we all have to be entrepreneurs. What does that mean? And how do we become that thing?
So this is it's a great question, and I think the starting point of it is radical responsibility, right? Because we can say I didn't get a business education. Okay, we need to get one then. like literally, and I don't want to sound like I don't understand what people are going through. I don't understand how hard this can be because now I've been through this, right? But nobody's coming to save us. As a community, it is our job to stand up and say, okay, this is the hand we've been dealt. Well, we're gonna play it, right? And so if we didn't get a business education, can we not get a business education? We can. Please understand that we are living in the best of times for physicians. I know it doesn't look that way, but let me land here, right? When I started my business, there were no Facebook groups. None. Like I was in an island all by myself, trying to figure out all these things. I had moved from a different state, so I didn't really have, and again, introvert. So I didn't come to Georgia and then make a lot of friends. That did not happen. And so I was in a silo. I didn't know anything about podcasts. I didn't know anything about YouTube channels. I didn't know anything about the Level Up Lady Doc group. Like we have all these resources now that we didn't have then, right?
Yeah.
So it may look like things are quote unquote bad now, but we also have a lot of opportunity. Okay. So we have the opportunity to learn entrepreneurial skills. We do. Okay. And there are books that we can read, right? And sometimes people say, I'm too busy to read. And I'm like, So I want you to open your phone, open that productivity app. Let's look at how much time you've been spending on Facebook, watching all those funny cat videos, right?
Yeah.
Again, radical responsibility. I may not have the time, but this is important. I will make the time, right? Radical responsibility. There are books that we can read. I highly recommend this book called the EntreMD Method book. Right?
Yes. Oh, you know what? I don't have it in front of me. I think it's on my nightstand.
That's a good place for it to be, right? But that's a book to read. It's a $16 book, right? The EntreMD podcast is there. I call it the free MBA for physicians. We are like episode 320. And there's episode after episode that you can use to start changing the way you think and acquiring the skills, right? So there's programs. The EntreMD Business School is one of those programs, but all these things exist. So it's up to us to say, no, I'm going to acquire an education. You don't need to take off of medicine and do a 2-year MBA. You don't need to do that. We can acquire the information, right? So that's the first thing. And it's all around radical responsibility. The second thing is there are physicians who are doing this. They are found in communities. You put yourself in those communities. Now, I always say that I'm not really good at learning languages, but I'm very good at picking up accents. It's so weird. So if I stay somewhere, I went to visit my brother in England a few years ago, and it was so funny. Within 24 hours, oh, could you give me a cup of tea? And I was like, what is wrong with you? Like, what are you doing? I pick up accents really well. But if you wanted, if I needed to learn Spanish, right? Even though I'm not really good at picking up languages, if you left me in Spain for 3 months, I'll
Yeah.
pick up a lot
Yeah.
of Spanish, right?
Immersion, right? They have
Immersion,
immersion programs.
right? And we can do the same thing as physician entrepreneurs. There are many people like, oh, doctors can't be entrepreneurs. I hate the business of medicine. I don't want anything to do with that. That's a community not to be in, right? You want to be in a community where people have started adopting that. You'll be in communities where people are like, I negotiated with my hospital. I got a scribe for myself. I negotiated with my hospital, and now I have a 4-day work week and my salary stayed the same. Dr. Sharita, you know that this happened. Like,
Yeah.
this is something that happens, right?
All the
You
time.
see someone else that, oh, I built my brand and I got this speaking gig as an employed physician and they're paying me, 1,500, 5 grand, 10 grand, like all kinds of things. Like, you need to be in those communities, right? Because these things are happening. Doctors are making those transitions, right? And then the third thing is start. And when I say start, I don't mean, oh, break out and start a private practice or anything like that. But every physician has a business that is their personal brand. Dr. U Incorporated is a business you have, not tomorrow, not next week, not 3 years from now. That's your business right now. You may not have paid attention to it. You may not have been working on the valuation of your business. You may not have seen it as an asset, but it is. And so you can start right now building that. You can start right now, because whether if you're employed, it is that brand that you use to as your leverage to negotiate and all of those things.
Yeah.
If you have a practice, that is that brand you use to build it up, to increase your volumes, to get the right people to work with you. If you're a coach, like whatever you are, you already have a business. And so you want to start experimenting with the business you have. We don't have the liberty of the luxury of, oh, I'll just wait till later. No, we were way past that in 2016. We are
Yeah.
way, 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 way past that right now. Every job is at risk. Every business is at risk. Like, it's all at risk if we don't become entrepreneurs. This is the time.
Yeah. So now what about those who say, okay, I can hear you. I can hear you that I am a brand, Dr. Meat Incorporated. But what if I honestly don't feel like I have a business in me? Or I have no idea what that business would be. The only thing I know anything about is being a doctor. What do you say to those people? Because I know I was one of those people, some time ago, and I thought, okay, and especially given the climate with the student loans and other things, I felt like the only option I had was medicine, because that was the only thing that was going to pay enough for me to be able to pay the loans. And so it's like we adopt these limiting beliefs and put our own selves in a box. But how do we get out of that? What is it that it takes for us to get out of that box?
Yeah, so let's track back and talk about the student loan piece first. And that, the only thing that can make me enough revenue is what I do as a doctor. So now when we talk about entrepreneurship, we're not talking about quitting medicine. We're not talking about exchanging one skill for another. We're talking about layering one skill on another, right? Like, so that's what we're talking about. But if you get into the entrepreneurial world, you find that really entrepreneurs are shocked that physicians make like 150 grand, 300. They're like, oh, you do all of that for just that? So the only people who think that nobody earns like doctors are doctors. Nobody else thinks that. I'm telling you, nobody else thinks that. But I just wanted to throw that out there. And that, again, that's not to say, oh, our salaries suck. This is awful. That's not the point. The point I'm trying to make is we should expand our horizons. Like, there's so much out there. Like, really, there's so much out there. Now, again, when it comes to the only thing I know is what I do, please understand that that's enough to start with. What you have right now is enough to start with. So I'll give you an example. There is a doctor, and you know her, I just won't say her name. I don't remember if she's told this story publicly, but when she started off, she was a family medicine doctor. That's what she is. And she didn't have a business idea in the traditional sense of a business, but she understood that she had to become what we call an entrepreneur, right? Who's an entrepreneur who works a job. And so what she started doing was she started building her referral network. So she was working in the hospital, but she built her own referral network. So people were coming because of her. She started showing up on TV representing the hospital, but guess whose brand is being built? Her brand, right? She started building a robust social media presence, right? Whose brand is that? It's her brand. Now, those three things opened all kinds of doors for her. So first of all, the hospital then started a new primary care location, put her as a lead physician there. 80% of the new patients documented came because of her. Like, oh, we saw her, we found her on social media, or we heard her on radio, or one of her friends sent us, right? 80% of the new patients. What did that do for her? That gave her the opportunity to negotiate in the middle of the pandemic for a 4-day work week. And they said yes and kept her salary the same. Yeah. That's the power of her brand. And so you can do the math, right? Now I'm just making up. If she was earning $2,000 a day, right? Think of it, the extra day off, that comes to $100,000. Yeah. Her brand made her $100,000. That's the thinking, right? She didn't start off some new business or whatever. She just took the brand that she did have and she developed it and looked at it as a business asset because that is what it is, right? In the same way, after she was, it opened so many doors for speaking gigs, paid speaking gigs, international speaking gigs. She was doing while she was working, right? When she was done with the hospital, because they gave her some fascinating non-compete, and she's like, I will not be signing that. They're like, everybody signs that. I will not be signing that, right? What gave her that leverage? She had a brand to fall back on. And she was like, I'm going to take some months off and, figure out what I want to do, because she's like, I know what to do. That's the thing. I know how to create revenue. I know what to do. I know I'm an asset. I know somebody will be like, oh my goodness, you and your network and your referral base and all that come work for me. And would you know it that somebody approached her and said, I'll start a whole practice for you. I'll start a whole practice for you because I know that your brand will make my brand more profitable. That is all from one person who owned her business, Dr. Her Incorporated. So it's not about starting a private practice or being a coach or whatever. What you have right now is enough. Your brand as a physician is enough to start with.
Yeah, but I guess, so what are the mindset shifts? Because that's kind of what I'm into. What are the mindset shifts that need to happen for us to recognize that we actually have that power? Because I think that's really what is at the foundation of this, is that we have to own our power and our ability to, almost reinvent ourselves or embrace who we are. Because really all she did was embrace who she was. She was a family practice doc, beautiful personality, stellar physician. All she did was capitalize on who she was. But how do we leverage that?
I think it starts from understanding, seeing, maybe even taking inventory, understanding what we have. Everybody sees it. Everybody sees it. So let me give you some examples. When a recruiter sends you an email and says, oh, there's this job opening here, blah, 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 and you're like, I'm not interested. What is the next thing they tell you? Oh, could you pass it on to your colleagues? Yes. They're very aware that you have this network that can make them 6 figures in commissions. We don't know. To us, they're just our friends.
We're the ones who don't know our own value.
We don't know. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, so it's sitting and taking inventory. Why do people tell me, oh, let your colleagues know? Why do they say that? Right? Why do they say that? So it's taking inventory and realizing that I have everything it takes to become a successful entrepreneur. I have everything. When I say that, this is what I mean. Are we going to need to learn new things? We are going to learn new things. But who is the leader of the healthcare space? I mean, let's come all the way back to it, right? The relationship is called a doctor-patient relationship. Everybody in the middle doesn't need to be there.
Right.
Do you see what I'm like? It's a doctor-patient. So we kind of gave up the leadership of the space, but we're the leaders of the space. We're the owners of the space. I had someone say, oh, they gave me an opportunity to be the chief medical officer. And I said, no. What, wait, what happened? Why? Why? You're allergic to the position? Like, why did you say no? Well, I'm not qualified. I don't have I'm like, it's chief medical officer. Who else
Right.
should be the chief medical officer?
But you know what, Dr. Una, though, I feel like through training and also in employed positions that we get beat down. You know, like you get told what to do. You're told you can only see patients for 15 minutes. You're told you weren't profitable enough. You owe money. You know, all of these things. It's like they've taken the power away, and you know, and so it's hard to then take ownership again, to recognize that we do actually have power and we should exert that power, because there really is no medicine without us.
But the thing is, they didn't really take our power.
We gave it.
Well, one is that to an extent we gave it, but other than that, it's like bullying. They make us think we don't have something that we have.
Okay.
Do you see what I'm saying? Like,
I do.
The second I say I'm done, it's done, right?
Yeah.
They've made us believe an illusion that we don't have power. They've made us believe those things. It's not true. We have the power. It's up to it really, because it comes back to us looking at it is a doctor-patient relationship. Looking, if I walk away, the hospital doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
Think of all the times they tell you to stay in your lane, but they need your signature for everything.
Right.
Do you see what I'm saying? Like,
so now tell me, so why don't we, what prevents us from being a unified body and saying, you know, we're going to all walk away if you don't do X, Y, and Z, if you don't allow us to, you know, prescribe what we need to prescribe when we need to prescribe it, if you don't allow us enough time with the patients? What prevents us from doing that?
I don't think we're there yet. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. I think some of the things we're talking about right now are a little too new. There are a number of people who are like, wait, what do you mean by that? Right? I think it's a little too new that at this time, we don't need everybody. We need enough people. We only need 10% of the people to adopt these ideologies, only 10% of the people to become shining examples of what is possible. Because once we hit that number, what happens is people can't unsee it. And then it's a wrap. They can't unsee. Okay, so for instance, you're in the EntreMD business school, right?
Yeah.
You can't unsee what's happening there. No. And so there's certain conversations you're like, yeah, I don't do that. We don't do that. Right. And if someone tells you, oh, we're not going to renew our contract, maybe 5 years ago, you'd be devastated by it. Now
we celebrate.
Whatever, we know what to do. I've been meaning to follow this business idea. I think I'm going to do it. Right. Or I just want to do locums because I want to take 5 months off. And so the point is, that's in that community. Once we hit 10%, so you hear me talking about 100,000 physicians. I want to help 100,000 physicians is because it's 10% of the population.
Okay.
Once we have that, we don't need to be unified in a body, but I was going to say the rebellion. It's not the rebellion, the revolution, right? The revolution will happen because people can't unsee that.
Okay.
They just
so 10% is a critical mass.
10% is a critical mass.
Yeah.
Because I started studying movements, right? I'm like, what is required for there to be a movement? And what it shows is once you can affect 10% of the community, you've affected the community. And so I was like, okay, I don't have to have a big goal of 1 million. I don't need that. I just need 100,000 people. Let's do this. Once we do that, there'll be too many examples that the old norm, that's what it would be at that time, will be like totally ridiculous. Like, you don't talk to us like that. You don't
Yeah.
try to contain us like that. We're not going to do that. But, okay, you know of the doctor who they reached out, they said, oh, we're going to cut everybody's salary by 10%.
Yeah.
Which the normal thing would be, we go in a Facebook group, we complain, we whine, we're like, we can't take it, we should form a union, we should stop this, and that's the end.
Right.
The woman walks up and negotiates with the executive body, and it's like, we're not doing that. And because of her negotiation, the entire hospital was saved from a pay cut. Like, the physicians were saved from a pay cut. Why? Because she had seen something that she can't unsee. So we just need enough examples.
Yeah.
So we're not there yet.
Well, Dr. Una, I have enjoyed this so much. We are getting a little bit short on time. Guests that are watching, if you have questions, please put them in the comments. I'm happy to ask. I do like to, well, first of all, how can people work with you? If they, because I know there's a plethora of ways to to be exposed to Dr. Una, but I want you to tell us if you're interested in working, if someone's interested in working with you, how can they do that?
Yeah, so there are a number of ways. There are three main ways, because I'm after 100,000 physicians, right? And so I alluded to, first of all, is the free MBA, right? Which is the EntreMD podcast. We have 2 episodes every week. Dr. Sharita, you listen to it, so you can attest to this. It is not fluff. It is not like, oh, let's give them some watery things, and if they really work with us, we'll do the real thing. It's the thing, right? And so I want. Yeah. I want you to be somebody who you just add that to your routine. Every Monday I'm listening to an episode. Every Thursday I'm listening to an episode. Just add that. It would rewire your thinking. And again, it's about hearing some things you can't unhear, hearing about some people's, you can't unhear them. And so that's the first thing. The second thing is the EntreMD Method book, which again is the $16 MBA. That's what we call it. And really, that is all around. It's a roadmap. Like, start from the beginning. This is how you build your brand. This is how you build your network, and on all of those things. And then, if you're like, Dr. Una, I want to do this like I mean it. I want my life to be completely different in the next, 90 days to a year. Then come join us in the EntreMD Business School. The EntreMD Business School is the school for doctors who are committed to building profitable 6, 7, multiple 7-figure businesses, so they can have the freedom to live life and practice medicine on their terms. There we build dream businesses and dream lives concurrently. It is a magical place where you get the coaching, you get the accountability, you get the community, you see things you can never unsee. It's a game changer. And all of these things you can find on the website, entremd.com.
Okay. So now I usually end on the same question, or variation of the same question. So if there's someone who you've begun to open their eyes, they begun to wake up today, and there's one action that they can take, the single best thing they can do to up-level their personal branding or their entrepreneurial path, what would you recommend?
So I probably have a non-conventional answer, and that will become join the EntreMD Business School.
Okay.
I literally was thinking about it when you said that, and I'll tell you why I say that. We are wired to be the best entrepreneurs. We put people before profits. We understand delayed gratification. We have an unbelievable capacity to learn, but we need to learn some things. And it is a real radical shift, right, from physician to physician entrepreneur. And the fastest way to do that is to be exposed to the right mentorship, and it is to be in the right community and to have the accountability. Because the thing is this, there are a lot of things we know how to do, but we're not doing them.
Yeah.
Because we're not in a container of accountability. And so this is not a sales pitch at all, but that's what made the difference for me. The first thing I did, you heard my story, it was like, okay, so speaking, well, let's go invest and do that. And the rest is history. If you're a physician, you don't want to dilly-dally, you don't want to play around, you want to get this done, you want to be different, you want to take back control, you want to create financial freedom, you want to create time freedom, you want to live life on your terms, then you should let me rephrase it. It may not even be the business school, but you need to put yourself in a container.
Yeah.
But just doing what you've always done and thinking that things will be radically different, it does not work that way.
Yeah, no, I think I have to agree with you because it just teaches you to think a different way. You know, your mind just does not, like you said, it's a rewiring almost. Your mind is just not the same. You see opportunities where you didn't see opportunities before. And I think when you're kind of siloed off by yourself, it's very easy to fall right back into your old pattern of thinking, your old behaviors, and all of those things. And it does take a community and constant reinforcement and, you know, all of those things to propel you forward.
Yeah, absolutely. That would be my thing. That's the game changer right there.
Well, thank you so much for joining me tonight. It has really been my pleasure. Thank you for sharing with the guest at EntreMD Business School, EntreMD Podcast, EntreMD Method Book, all of those things. Check them out. And then actually, Dr. Una has a couple more podcasts that she didn't mention. Um, one, the Doctors Changing Medicine podcast, and also the God in Your Business podcast, which is actually probably, you know, one of my favorites as well. So, you know, check her out. All of her contact information will be in the comments. So that's it for tonight. Thank you for joining